Okay, let's get back to this. There is an update to the player-to-player Alpha UEC trading drama stuff that's happened over the last couple of days. They Freya posted this, and yeah, they're going to give us more details on like how everything should and will be working potentially going forward. So let's take a look at it over here. Also, we're really close to finishing the goal for Zeus, which is amazing. Lots of things around this conversation made me realize how ridiculously stupid this community is, and then things like this remind me how ridiculously awesome they are. But anyway, player-to-player trade update starts out with, hey everyone, with the latest 4.8 update, we made some changes to how player-to-player transactions work. We wanted to give you a heads up on what's changing and be up front, that's my favorite part, that this is an area we'll be actively adjusting over the coming days and weeks. Guys, if you're up front, you post this before you make the change, and you don't have the community squirming trying to figure out what the hell is going on. If you make this post first. Classic CIG communication, right? We haven't had a video in weeks from Jared, and because somebody recorded him at a Bar Citizen or something. Obviously, that's sarcasm, but Jesus, man, come on. So, all right, let's get to what's new. Trades between players now require both parties to be online. Now, I hate this, but they'll touch on it in a second. And I'm going to be much more calm about the both parties online thing, knowing what's coming up in just a moment. With the recipient acknowledging the transaction before it completes, essentially acting like a trade window. This helps ensure transfers are intentional and confirmed on both ends, right? I put up my check mark, you put up your check mark, and we're good, right? And the reason they do this, and it's so ironic and so funny to me, is this is being used to like balance economy problems. So in case you are just coming in from the free fly and somehow come across this video where this video is not really intended for you, it's probably intended more for people who have been degenerately following this game for way too long, like myself. But the idea here was, in the previous year, we've had insane amounts of exploits, with the game being honestly the biggest exploit, where there's tons of faucets of money just flowing out of the game towards its players and none of it flowing out, right? So even in the current iteration of Star Citizen, money is flowing out of the system into our wallets, but none of it is flowing out of our wallets back into the system. So over time, we're going to get insane inflation, and then players are going to have so much money on their accounts that money is going to be meaningless, right? So what happened for maybe, like, let's say the last 6 months, it was the biggest issue, is there were, not only that was a problem, but there was significant money exploits where people had trillions of credits. There were trillions and trillions and trillions in the in-game economy. So players had so much money on their accounts that money had no meaning. So when they felt that they had too much and they just wanted to get rid of it, you could just send money to any random person in the game. See them on a list in a server, send them 500 million. Boom. Send them 2 billion. Done, right? So that's what was kind of happening there, is people were just sending money to random people because money doesn't matter. So CIG says, oh, the problem is that players can send money to any random player. No, the problem is that money doesn't matter. If money matters, nobody sends money to random people because they actually need it in the video game. Like, what is so difficult about this, guys? Like, oh my God. Everyone that's defending this idea, there may be video games that have these kind of transfer limits. Those video games probably are not spending a lot of time on balancing their economy and sinks and faucets and things like that, because it's takes dev time. There's lots of tools that you need to make and levers you need to pull and things like that. But I thought Star Citizen was going to be different. I thought Star Citizen was really trying to be a great game. I didn't think Star Citizen was just trying to make a video game and just make do the bare minimum and just make money, like a lot of the games that I saw people mention, right? But no, currently they are doing that, right? So the issue here is that money doesn't matter in the game, and players just kind of throw it around willy-nilly, because what else do you do with it, right? What else do you do with money when you accumulate a ton of it? A lot of players gave that money to newer players that were just joining the game so they could try new ships, because ships are really the only cool thing in the game, right? As far as, I mean, there are cool things like Hathor or the Radiated Valakar. Now there's lots of cool like content to experience, especially stuff like Hathor and the Radiated Valakar that aren't as ship dependent, which is pretty sick. But in general, what do you do with money? You buy ships, right? So yeah. Now, here's the part that calmed me down a little bit. The online requirement is a temporary step. In the future, we plan to support offline notification resolution, which will send a trade offer to a player who's offline while still preserving the acknowledgement flow. So no need for like a timeout or anything like that. Until that's in place, both players will need to be online to complete a trade. Keep that in mind. In the future, keep that in mind. The in the future part. In addition, the UEE Bank now performs authorization verification on transactions, including limits on transaction rates and amounts. So again, they're saying there are limits on the rates and the amounts, but they are not saying what those limits are. Initially, that limit was 1 million credits and 5 million a day. Now we don't know what the limits are. Possibly people have figured it out, but it's more money than I have on my account. But literally role-playing in a fucking post, yeah, that we need actual information about is kind of funny. Our approach to limits. Our goal is to keep trade frictionless. Their initial... all of this is friction. All of this is friction. You are not achieving your goal. For players going about their normal business, you just made it so now I need 2 or 3 accounts to do normal business, by the way, while giving us the tools to identify and restrict abuse. Again, you got to be able to create tools to identify and restrict abuse while allowing players to play the video game. And in order to do that, instead of doing this, there should have been a trade window created within one of the 14 years that you've been developing this game. There probably should be a trade window. And then there would be a lot less problems here. So then when somebody trades 14 billion for a cruise lux, you could probably go, ooh, that's something we would flag. Let's look into that, right? We're working towards a flexible system of limits with multiple tiers so that legitimate activity sits comfortably within them, while unusual patterns can be flagged without affecting everyone else. Again, flagging things is one thing. Completely restricting players is an entirely different thing. Remember, this game is described as a sandbox. Reminder. Now, I know that this isn't, being able to send money randomly to people isn't really necessarily the sandbox, thing. But it sounds like, again, overcomplicating everything to just avoid making the game. Like this is my favorite part about this, is we are going to overcomplicate our Band-Aid because we don't want to make a game. It's so ridiculous. What's an unusual pattern? I mean, one account spewing out billions of credits to a bunch of different people all throughout the day, 24 hours a day, something like that. Hey, guys, we now have this. This is very funny. Oz_Eve. This is going to end up being a Star Citizen YouTube video. So say hello, Oz. Is the guy who talks about economies in EVE Online, which is the reason why I talk about the economy in Star Citizen in the way that I do. He's like the catalyst for lots of these conversations. It's all good, man. But Oz, Star Citizen just put a restriction on player-to-player trading of money. And they're not allowing people to send. They're limiting how much money they could send back and forth, and ignoring the fact that this is an endless conversation about EVE Online is faucets and sinks. There's endless faucets in Star Citizen and no sinks. So then they go, oh, well, instead of putting in sinks, we're just going to restrict how much players can trade between each other, because in previous patches, people lost the value of money and we're just spewing it out to players randomly and creating billions of credits on people's accounts when you have nothing to spend it on. So this is just, you're going to enjoy this conversation. How will they manage inflation? They don't. That's the best part. They don't. And they have no discussion of how they're going to do it. Just like a reminder, so I can catch up Oz here and can add to the conversation of things that I have not added yet. Guys, how much does fuel cost in the game? Nothing. How much does ammunition cost in the game? Nothing. They've lowered the price of missiles, is my understanding as well, right? But that's still kind of one thing that is kind of inflation reduction and a bit of a sink. But there's ways around it, like there used to be ways around it, like insurance. So the insurance thing is coming. So this is a good opportunity to take the time of going, we are very close to a lot of these changes actually happening. So I don't want to ignore this aspect either. There's things that are happening with insurance where costs are going up when you die in Star Citizen, where those costs used to be non-existent. So I don't want to ignore that either. I want to be fair here, is that there are some sinks that are already appearing in the game and some that may get even worse in the future. But yeah, in case people don't know Oz, he's on the CSM, which is a player voted in thing in Star Citizen, where I think it's like 12 players or something like that are voted in and in talks with the developers themselves on future features and current issues in the game. And they talk about them for players, and Oz focuses on the economy. And yeah, they talk about money in and out supply all the time, has weekly talks about it every week with them and trying to make sure the game is good. 10 are voted in and 2 are just straight up picked. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah. And I've talked about doing this in Star Citizen. We're probably not there yet. The game needs to be there in order for something like that to happen. But Star Citizen often does things like this without discussing anything with players. So here's my favorite thing that they did. We don't have a true org system in the game. So I created an org account that we run all of our business through. So we, find items in the game, sell them to other players and stuff like that. But we all condense everything into one account, and then people can buy shares for our org, and then those shares are distributed. All the income is distributed every month back to the players. We might have to do it weekly now because of these restrictions. And so we just do profit sharing basically based on the number of shares that you have. So this thing completely limits what we can do there. So that's just like a fun sandbox thing that we do that we're no longer able to do, which is a little disappointing. But again, they said the goal is to create a frictionless thing for normal business. We can't do our normal business, but I understand that our business isn't normal. So I just respect the fact that, when they put restrictions on something that's like totally out of this world as far as the level in which we do business in, is understandable that we might hit those limits and things might become problems. So I think we are going to hit the limits when we do go to pay out our members this coming week or month or something like that. So we'll see. And we may not look like legitimate activity. That account may end up getting banned, and then I'm going to have to do tickets and stuff, which is unfortunate. And then hopefully that'll help CIG understand what players are trying to do. But again, we talked about it yesterday that the actual player market that players have created, a lot of the money that's going back and forth should no longer be restricted now, which is a good thing. So they said that we don't expect to land on the right values straight away. Finding the balance will take some tuning again, but if you had any sort of game knowledge at all, they would not have come to the values that they initially started with. But it's better to start really restrictive and then slowly let off those chains than to start very loose and slowly add those chains on, because just player mentality would get upset based off of the chains being slowly restricting them rather than, holy shit, I'm in jail, I can't do anything, to be like, ooh, my bad, and then gradually allow it to go out. 20 mil seems really smart. Nah, man. It's got to be like 100 to 250 mil a day, something like that. Otherwise, I can't do what I'm doing. But again, I understand I am the exception. But you have to remember, if they choose a number today, that number will be less relevant within a month, within 2 months, 3 months, 10 months, right? Because they have never ending inflation and no sinks to help with that inflation. So whatever number they choose today will be slowly less relevant over time. And again, inflation is crazy high in the game. Not as crazy as it had been in the past, but it's still very bad. So they're going to hit that limit, and everyone is. And UEX will reflect that inflation quicker than CIG can react to it. So remember that, right? Now, to be fair, they reacted instantly on this balance, but this was clearly done manually. That's not a good thing, right? What to expect? Now, this is where it gets funny. Over the next few days and weeks, you may notice changes to rate limiting and transaction thresholds as we calibrate things. So it might be going all over the place. Some limits may feel conservative at first while we gather data and find the right settings. If something feels off, that feedback is genuinely useful during this period. Thank you for bearing with us while we tune these systems. We appreciate your patience while we get this right. So the whole thing here is they're kind of explaining that this is just temporary. Lots of players are saying this is just temporary, right? I'm going to hit Control 2, and we're going to go to a post that was made on March 4th, 2025, over a year ago. And this is Alpha 4.1, our first look at item recovery. I posted this on Twitter, and I thought it was pretty funny. I don't make many Twitter posts, but it seemed like a good opportunity. I scrolled all the way down and said, and there was number of mentions of this in the post itself. The introduction of item recovery is a significant step towards making gear persistence more meaningful while maintaining the risk and reward balance of looting. Everybody knows there's no looting anymore. The risk and reward balance is almost non-existent. Tier 0 in Alpha 4.1 is just the beginning. As we further integrate into broader crafting and insurance systems, we will be actively refining and updating with help for your feedback throughout the PTU process and beyond. Now, again, want to recognize that we are likely on the cusp of these actual things changing, right? We see the insurance system in 4.8 now with ships. It's likely going to come to armor and FPS weapons very soon, right? Because they seem to like what they have there. I don't love it, but you know what? It is, I'm not going to love everything they do. So we have to recognize that this change is likely coming in like 4.9, 4.10, or 11, like probably within 2026. Okay, we're going to see some change to Tier 0 item recovery on FPS weapons and armor, but this was in March of 2025. And the communication is what I want you to pay attention to here. The communication here is that players should expect to see this iterate often and a lot and improve slowly, but in little bits over time. Nothing has changed about Tier 0 item recovery since this post. Zero. Nothing. So the expectation of expecting this to change slowly and iterate over time is what they say. But guys, their actions always show different. And until they change those actions, it's kind of hard to just listen to what they say. This is like their whole MO is tell them that we're going to do something and then not do it. And somehow the people in the community eat up whatever they say, regurgitate it on social media, and it just perpetuates forever of the just be patient conversation. Guys, this game's been in development for 14 years, and there's no trade window. There's no trade window. The most simple things that have existed forever don't exist in Star Citizen. And then when people say, well, Star Citizen is really complicated and hard to do this in, whose fault is that? Is that my fault? Is it my fault that we overcomplicated everything to the point where we cannot make simple solutions for simple and small problems? How is that my problem? Right? These are small and simple solutions. These are small problems. And when we have to create overcomplicated band-aids for the fact that we are not solving or creating solutions for small problems is the problem itself. Right? It's not, guys, if we have a trade window with logging, if we have a log of all the money traded back and forth between players, players can report other players. Hey, I just got 200 million randomly from this guy. Might want to look into him. Right? Ooh, I went on this website and spent $5 and bought money just to report this gold seller. You know, something like that could be a thing. I don't know. But in the end, the real solution here is building out the proper 1.0 systems, which I'll remind you, this post was in 2025. To clarify, these discussions in 2024. We're now in 2026. And the discussion in 2024 was everything that we're doing is how we're going to move towards 1.0, the released video game. What about this is representative of the released video game? Possibly the restrictions between money traded between players. But as I stated earlier in the stream, I don't know if I stated in whatever is being recorded and what will go up on YouTube, so I'll just say it again. Players traded money back and forth between each other at exorbitant rates because money doesn't matter, right? There is no reason for money to exist. If CIG doesn't create the reasons for money to, like, who doesn't want something to spend their money on in the game? There is no, like, this is an alpha conversation. Like, this is literally their job, right? I don't get it. I'm so confused that we should be wanting to spend money on games. That, you know, ships is one of those options, sure. Those are like the big macro, huge things. But I'm talking about on like the day-to-day operations. I've talked often about when ships explode, they should explode. When you die, you should have to rebuy armor, weapons, ammo, that kind of stuff. That's sort of why I mention those things, is so we don't end up in the situation that we're in right now, right? It doesn't have to be specifically those things. If that's not what you want and you feel insurance would be better, we can agree to disagree. We can go back and forth on those things. But in the end, it's the idea itself that there should be consumable things in this game that players are buying and using day in and day out that counterbalance the amount of money that is being spent or that is being thrown to players by simply playing the game, right? The players can't be at fault for enjoying Star Citizen, because that aspect is there. They like the missions. They like mining. Well, I don't know anybody who likes mining right now. They like salvaging. They like doing Wicklow type stuff and then trading it on UEX. That's the game, man. They're playing the game. They're not at fault here. CIG is kind of, I don't want to use fault. It's just, it's not there and it needs to be. And I hope what they get out of all of this discussion is, instead of, man, we need to restrict how much players trade. No, you need to create things for people to spend money on, and you need to do it sooner than later. So the priority list, which is always shifting, and for some godforsaken reason is never been on the list in 14 years, better start getting on the list real soon, because they're going to end up in the same boat within 6 months as they were last year. It won't be as significant, but we're all going to be in the same spot. I have 100 million on my account and I don't know what to do with it, right? That's where we're going to be. So, long ass rant on this. Apologize, but in the end, this is not the solution to the problem. This is a Band-Aid. Every single feature in this game is a Band-Aid, and there are very few actually fully developed in-game 1.0 ready type things. I think the only thing is literally the map. Jump points. I'm trying to think of like what could possibly be just kind of final, right? A Moby-Glass existing. The map sucks. No, I mean just like the map existing. Like where the planets are and stuff. You know? So yeah, missions, I don't know. So yeah, there's very little. So how do we even talk about 1.0 at this point? You can't. So yeah, that's where we're at, and I'll leave it there, but let me know what you guys think. I 100% don't want to do the Eve thing and criticize a game I've not played, but it blows my mind that managing in-game money supply and faucet and sink balance was not at the center of their game design. Same. It took for me to follow Eve Online to understand it, though. So a lot of people don't understand why, and they just kind of play the game and don't recognize that, you know, since we've had wipes and things like that, they don't recognize that, like, if Star Citizen is to exist for 20 years, that all of these problems will get so much worse, right? We've had 1 year of endless faucets and no sinks, and things got so bad in a year. So bad in 1 year that how over time in 20 years, like how bad would it really get, right? So it's an interesting one, but yeah, I don't know, man. We'll see what people think. And for me, it's like you have an economy team. So to me, this takes, if we're not hiring like a developer to implement ideas that the economy team is doing, or implementing a number of developers, or if of the 1,000 developers, we don't have people who could do that stuff, like, for me, I understand that you have like your gameplay teams, and they do, you know, and I don't. Here's the game development part that I don't understand is the structure of the company, who's working on what at what times. We still have this Squadron 42 thing looming over us, getting in the way of everything potentially, but we just don't know how much because we don't work there. I don't know how. I don't want to continuously blame the economy team for these problems, because they may have ideas that solve these solutions, but they don't have people who are fixing them. We don't have people who are implementing those fixes, I should say, right? So the economy team can have the ideas, and it sounds like the people who are there are idea guys and less implementation guys, right? And that might be the problem. So, yeah. You'll come back after 5 years and your currency will be worthless. Yep. And that's not the best. So, I don't know. That's where I'm at. And I just want to see a renewed, not a renewed, like, I don't want to take away from something that needs to go into 1.0. But I feel like at this point, if the focus is on 1.0, as it has been for apparently 2 years, these should be very much towards the top of the list, and not necessarily adding content to the game. Because if you implement more economic things, player trading, more sinks, less faucets, more balance to those kind of things, the sink and faucet elements of the game, then as you add features, I think it'll make more sense. But yeah, that's where I'm at. SaltEMike, I started playing last year. I had no concept of the economy or the game. Random player runs up and gives me 500 billion and runs off. That happened within a week of you playing. Yes, that is a very extreme situation that happened for a very extreme reason of a giant exploit that was in the game that no longer is in the game. So we will not have that extreme of a scenario, but we will have an almost equally similar problem where money didn't matter at all at the point in which that exploit happened. So, yeah. Very frustrating discussion to have here, but it is what it is. And it just comes down to what they do in the future.